All right, ready, set, go. All right, here we go. We're going to try to do the part two here, and we're going to try to incorporate arcs, and I'll give you a couple other hints and maybe ways you can kind of go about, kind of tweaking this and playing around with it a little bit. Um, so what I'm looking at right now is we've got this kind of span that's going across, right? And this one right now, it kind of overlaps a little bit, but we could play around with some of the other numbers here. For one, make sure you save. Anytime you start playing around with a for loop, you're very likely going to, this kind of playing around with a for loop, you have a good chance you might end up making an infinite loop. You don't want your browser to crash and then you lose the work you're in. So make sure you go up, you give it a good old save. Here I'm going to change my name to version 2. And I'm going to duplicate it. Make sure you duplicate or save as you go. Here's my copy. This will be my official version 2.0. I'll hit the, oh, it says project saved. We're good. All right, make sure you do that. And if you don't and you lose the work at this point, it's your fault. I warned you. I warned you. I'll try not to laugh at you, but I warned you. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to mess with the step, the step in the for loop. Remember, the first number is where you start. The next one is the limit, when it's going to end, the condition that makes it end. And then the last number on this side is going to be how many it goes each time. If this is really small and we run it, you see it kind of all stack up and gets to be a little bit more blended, which isn't a bad thing necessarily. And here, if I make it be something bigger and run it, I get much more of those kind of basic lines. So what I want to be able to do here is make it so that they kind of animate just a little bit. So I'm going to do that just really quickly using the frame count. I could do this kind of with the mouse, so you got to be careful either way. If I say frame count, and if I use just frame count, I'm definitely going to run into a problem, or frame count. And remember, the frame count starts at the very beginning as 0, and as the movie progresses, it's going to continue on to get a bigger number. When it gets to be bigger than our other number over here, when it gets to be bigger than the 255, we're going to run into problems. So we need to make sure that doesn't happen. So to do that, at least at the very beginning, and I'm still probably going to run into a problem here as it goes, but if I click that one and start, you can see here it's starting to kind of slowly change its steps, change its step, change its step. You can do something where maybe you have a counter or have something run so that you can do that. But when it gets too big, and here I've already saved it, so here we'll save it one more time. So when it gets to the point where it runs all the way out, I think we'll see it throw me an error. So let's see. I don't see the frame count at the moment, so whatever the frame count is divided by 12, once that gets bigger than the 255, I think it'll give me an error. Let's see. Maybe waiting for an error. Waiting for an error. All right, so maybe it won't give me an error, but I imagine if I let this run long enough, that number will get bigger. I could print that one out and see, but this is maybe a way for you to kind of animate stuff using that as the step. But at some point, the other option you could do here is you could mod it. You could say, give it to me as a number that I could run with a modulus. So if I use the modulus, which is that percent sign, and then put in a value like, what would I put in? If I make the step be frame count mod something, what if I make it be 254? So that way it shouldn't go over that one. Oh, now I get the error. Oh, well, I guess it would help if I close my parentheses. Let's see. That one's stepping all the way out. My hope here is that once it got too far out, it would then pick up and start over again. And then it wants to exit. So you'll see that there is a way for it to run. If you start running this no protect in your code, sometimes it works and it's perfectly fine. I think it's just really concerned because it saw a 0 come up. That's probably what happened. It did mod a certain number, a 0 came up. So wait, maybe if we do this +1, we don't get that error. We run all those +1, we probably won't get that error because the step will always be 1 or more. Oh, so there you go. So that's a way to kind of get around it. That little +1 means that it won't have a increment of 0. That's why it's giving us that protect error. All right, So this is one just to kind of make a cool animation. You could do lots of these. You could have it fanning out. You could have it do it with other shapes. You can do it with different forms. It'd be a cool way to kind of run through it and do it. The one I want to do next is actually using more of like an arc to do these things. Right now we have our line as being the stroke that happens. But what if we were to do it maybe more like an arc? And if we look up what the arc does, let's do that really quick. I'll do a quick search for the arc, and whoops, arc. And my arc, just to check my parameters here, remember it's got a couple different pieces to it. So if we come down and look what it is, it's really just an ellipse. It's really just the same as an ellipse. You have, if I go over that far, I think my hand cuts off. But you'll see that it has, oh yeah, it does. But if I could point right there, the ellipse, it's like you're making an ellipse where you have an X, a Y, a width, a height, and then the start and the stop. The mode is not super important for what we're doing at the moment, or the detail, but we could always come back and kind of play with that one if you're doing other coordinates and stuff. So let's copy that little line just for our own reference as we go back. And there's another one I think I'm going to employ here. Let's see, is it in this one? Angle mode. So we can kind of cheat angle mode. There we go, angle mode. So with angle mode, I can choose to have the my degrees instead of radians. And we've talked about radians some in the past, but in this case, we're going to switch our angle mode to be degrees. So let's do that in here right now. So we're using HSB. We're going to use angle mode, and I'm going to all caps degrees. So there's my angle mode, there's my degrees, and then down here I'm going to make my arc. And just to leave myself a comment, that's like what my note is for my comment. And I'll simplify it to look like that. So let's make our arc. I'm going to start it right in the middle of my screen. So I'm going to say width divided by 2, height divided by 2. And for my width, let's make it, oh, this one I want to make bigger over time, right? Because I want to use my eye for it. So let me make it be something like 12, or can I just make it be I? Let's try to make it I, comma, I. Let's try that. Is that kind of radical? I, comma, I, start, stop. No, that's width and height. Okay, width and height is going to be I and I. So it's just going to be circular in whatever shape we make. And then our start and our stop, that's where it's going to get interesting. So I'll start at 0, and I'm going to go to I. It's a lot of I's in there. So all I'm really changing here is my width, my height. I'm going to start at 0, I'm going to stop at I. So let's see what that does. That even without me doing anything else with that, is that going to do something crazy? Oh, it's totally doing something crazy. So let me see. Oh, it's because my frame count's so crazy. All right, let's change that. Let's take that out for a moment. Maybe we'll come back and use that. I'm just going to put it as a comment there to begin with. And let's go to our 20-something degrees. And here you can see I've created this one. Now, I think my challenge here is that it's doing a fill in the middle. That's hiding, I think, some of what's going on. So let's knock that off. We'll say no fill for this particular one and run it. There. So now I'm starting to see them inside. Let's comment out our line. So we have our little rainbow here, but it's kind of starting. It's starting really small in the middle and then spiraling out. Let's make our stroke weight be a little something smaller, like 12. There we go. All right, so I am getting some of this as an offset and making my color go out from it. So right now, it's because this is changing over time. If I were to make this be a set amount, like 180, oops, 180, I should be able to get that as kind of my rainbow. But remember, if I wanted to kind of swap that around, I could start at 180 and go to 360. So I'm going to leave a challenge here for folks. You'll notice that the way that the rainbow is kind of going right now, that the red is kind of on the inside and the purple's on the outside, and that's probably not how you envision a rainbow, right? Rainbows typically have the red on the top. So how would you go about doing that? Looking and thinking about how your for loop is set up is going to be the way you figure it out. So think about how it's set and make it so that your rainbow is actually red side up. And if you want to change your step or make it so that you have lots more little steps of color, here I'll do it as like a step of 12. You'll see I'm getting more and more individual lines. If I make it be something bigger like 31, here you'll see they kind of space out. But get creative with this one. See what you can do with these ones. I think it also looks good if you kind of change your background to being something, darker. Sometimes they kind of pop out and stand out a little bit better. But here's your challenge. Go out there, try to experiment with these, see which ones kind of work for you. You can even animate these, which I think is really super fun. But know that just this arc is giving you the command here to start. The first two are the X and the Y, the width and the height is being adjusted with my I values here, and it's really just where I start and stop. So I could make this be like 90 and make it like a 3/4 one, or I could really use my mouse to adjust these. Be creative. And I don't want to give you too much things just to follow. I feel like I've already talked far too much. And if you've gotten this far, congratulations. Thank you, and can't wait to see what you create.